Hey everyone, I just want to take a moment to say a huge thank you to all of you who have subscribed. We've officially hit 40 subscribers. It's so exciting to see this community growing, and it means the world to me that you've decided to join this journey. But here's something surprising. Only 3% of my views have come from subscribers. That means a lot of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button yet. If you're enjoying the content, smash that like button, click subscribe, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. Now, let's talk about our last comment section game. The number I was thinking of between 1 and 100 was 37, and a huge shout out to at Jamaica Tech Chaos 9972 for guessing it right. Thank you so much for being such a loyal subscriber. Of course, we're going to play the guessing game again. I'm thinking of a new number between 1 and 100. Leave your guess in the comments below. If you get it right, I'll pin your comment and give you a shout out in the next video. All right, without further ado, let's get right into the video. The weekend was supposed to be an escape, a retreat from the chaos of everyday life. Silver Pine Lake, nestled deep in the woods of Maine, was as picturesque as it was isolated. The cabin, a sprawling rustic lodge, was a bit of a splurge, but splitting the cost among 10 friends made it doable. We were all seniors at the University of New England, desperate to cling to these fleeting moments of carefree camaraderie before graduation scattered us across the country. There was me, Lena, the de facto planner of our group, and my best friend Marcus. Then there were the couples, Bree and Jason, Layla and Jordan, and Sam and Eva. Rounding out the group were Tyler, the jokester, Daphne, the quiet one, and Chris, whose dark humor was an acquired taste. From the moment we arrived, I felt a strange unease. The cabin owner, an older man named Mr. Harrington, had a presence that made my skin crawl. He handed me the keys, his gnarled fingers brushing mine, and smiled just a little too long. "Enjoy your weekend," he said. "And remember, out here, it's easy to get lost." We brushed off the weird vibe. After all, we were here for fun, not to worry about some creepy landlord. The first night was uneventful. We grilled steaks, played drinking games, and laughed until our sides hurt. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, and the woods around us felt both serene and suffocating. It was Bree who first mentioned the odd layout of the cabin. "Doesn't it feel like there are too many rooms?" she said, sipping her beer. We explored after dinner, counting at least 5 bedrooms and a few locked doors. Mr. Harrington had mentioned those were storage, but something about the locks bothered me. Still, it was easy to forget our unease when the night was filled with jokes and drunken antics. By the time we stumbled into bed, none of us noticed the faint scratching sounds coming from the walls. The next morning, Tyler was gone. His bed was untouched, his bag still in the corner. "Probably went for a swim," Jason said, shrugging it off. But after an hour of searching the lake and the surrounding woods, we began to worry. It was Sam who found the blood. A faint trail led from the dock into the forest, and it wasn't long before we found Tyler, or what was left of him. He was propped against a tree, his throat slit so deeply it was almost decapitation. His eyes were wide open, frozen in terror. The group exploded into chaos. Bree was sobbing uncontrollably. Layla was hyperventilating, and Jordan was trying to console her. Chris, ever the cynic, muttered, "What the hell kind of animal does this?" But then we found the knife. It was Jason's. "Explain this," Marcus yelled, holding up the bloodied blade. Jason stammered, insisting he'd never seen it before, but suspicion had already taken root. The discovery of the knife shattered any sense of unity we had. Jason swore up and down that he didn't kill Tyler, but the evidence was damning. The group splintered into factions almost immediately. Bree, Jason's girlfriend, was adamant about his innocence. She clung to his arm like a lifeline, glaring at anyone who suggested otherwise. Marcus and I sided together, more out of a sense of self-preservation than trust. "We need to stick together," he whispered. "Safety in numbers." Layla and Jordan seemed hesitant, unsure who to believe. Layla looked like she was ready to collapse at any moment, while Jordan was clearly trying to hold it together for her. Chris, Daphne, Sam, and Eva formed their own uneasy alliance. Though Chris's constant morbid jokes weren't helping anyone's nerves, we decided to head back to the cabin and lock ourselves in while we figured out our next move. But tension was high, and every glance carried suspicion. By nightfall, the cabin felt more like a prison. We barricaded the doors and windows, but sleep was impossible. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside sent shivers down my spine. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of muffled cries. I stumbled into the hallway to find Daphne's door ajar. Her bed was empty. "Guys, Daphne's gone," I shouted. The group scrambled to search the cabin, but Daphne was nowhere to be found. It was Marcus who noticed the faint trail of bloody footprints leading down to the basement, a part of the cabin we hadn't explored yet. "Should we go down there?" Layla whispered, her voice trembling. "Do we have a choice?" Marcus replied grimly. The basement was cold, damp, and smelled faintly of rot. We found Daphne hanging by her wrists from the ceiling, her body swaying slightly. A jagged X was carved into her chest. She was still alive, but barely. "Help me," she gasped, her voice a broken whisper. We cut her down and tried to stop the bleeding, but she was fading fast. "It wasn't an animal," she managed to say before her head lolled to the side. Then we noticed the message scrawled on the wall in blood. "Trust no one." The group erupted into accusations again. Sam pointed the finger at Chris, claiming his dark sense of humor was proof he could do something this heinous. Chris fired back, accusing Sam of planting the knife earlier to frame Jason. The alliances were fracturing further, and I realized we were being played. The cabin felt alive with tension, every creak and whisper turning us against each other. I tried to reason with everyone, but paranoia had set in deep. Chris and Sam nearly came to blows, with Eva stepping between them, screaming for them to stop. Layla was sobbing in the corner, clutching Jordan's arm so tightly her knuckles were white. Bree, meanwhile, was arguing with Marcus, who had taken to pacing with a fireplace poker in hand, muttering about needing protection. "What if it's one of us?" Eva finally said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Daphne said it wasn't an animal. What if it's a setup? What if someone here is doing this?" Her words hung in the air, and suddenly, every glance felt sharper, every movement more suspicious. We decided to take turns, standing watch in pairs, hoping to prevent another disappearance. Sam and Jordan volunteered to go first. The rest of us retreated to our rooms, locking the doors behind us. A few hours later, a blood-curdling scream tore through the cabin. I bolted upright, grabbing Marcus, who had fallen asleep on the floor beside my bed. "Stay behind me," he said, gripping the poker tightly as we ran toward the sound. We found Jordan at the base of the stairs, shaking uncontrollably. Sam's body was sprawled on the landing, his head twisted at an unnatural angle. A rope, tied into a noose, dangled from the ceiling. "It wasn't me," Jordan stammered, tears streaming down his face. "He went upstairs and I heard a noise. I found him like this." The group assembled again, horrified and on edge. But something was different now. The deaths weren't just chaotic, they were orchestrated. The sun rose, but it brought no comfort. Marcus and I ventured outside to see if we could find any sign of help. What we found instead made my stomach drop. The tires of every car had been slashed. The phones still had no signal. And worst of all, deep in the woods, we found a hidden graveyard, fresh mounds of dirt, marked with crude wooden crosses. There were 7 of them. "This was planned," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "Whoever's doing this knew we'd be here. They've been waiting." When we returned to the cabin, we found Chris dead. His body was sprawled across the kitchen table, a knife embedded in his chest. Next to him was a note scrawled in blood. "Liar." At this point, the remaining group, me, Marcus, Bree, Jason, Eva, Layla, and Jordan, was unraveling. "Someone's framing us," Eva yelled. "We're being hunted and you're too blind to see it." "Or you're the one doing it," Jason shot back, his voice icy. We were spiraling, and the killer, or killers, were taking full advantage of it. By the 3rd day, the cabin had devolved into sheer chaos. The air felt heavier, and every shadow seemed alive with malice. Tensions reached a breaking point as the remaining group divided further. Bree refused to leave Jason's side, clinging to him like a shield. Eva and Layla stayed close to Jordan, who was growing more and more erratic. Marcus and I, now an inseparable duo, kept our distance, watching the others with suspicion. "I don't trust any of them," Marcus whispered as we huddled in the corner of the living room. "Someone's messing with us, Lena, and it's working." We tried to come up with a plan, whether to stay and fortify the cabin or attempt to make a run for it. But before we could decide, another scream echoed through the halls. We found Ava in the bathroom, slumped against the tub. Her wrists were slashed, and blood pooled around her lifeless body. What made it worse was the mirror above her. Written in crimson letters were the words, "Confession." "Confession? What does that mean?" Layla cried, her voice cracking. "Maybe she did it," Jordan suggested, though his voice betrayed his own disbelief. "Maybe the guilt got to her." "No," Marcus barked. "This isn't a suicide. Look at her wrists. This was staged." The group was unraveling faster now. Bree clung to Jason, sobbing uncontrollably. Layla, wide-eyed and trembling, looked like she was on the verge of a breakdown. And Jordan just stared at Eva's body, his expression unreadable. As night fell, we barricaded ourselves in the living room. No one trusted the others enough to sleep alone anymore. But as the hours dragged on, exhaustion overtook us. I woke to the sound of rustling. In the dim light of the fireplace, I saw Bree and Jason slipping toward the back door. "Where are you going?" I demanded, startling the rest of the group awake. "We can't stay here," Jason said. "Whoever's doing this is picking us off one by one. We're getting out of here." "Are you crazy?" Marcus snapped. "It's the middle of the night and the killer's out there." But Bree and Jason were adamant. Despite our protests, they slipped into the dark woods, leaving the rest of us behind. Hours later, we heard their screams. Morning revealed their bodies. Bree was impaled on a tree branch, her lifeless eyes staring down at us. Jason was strung up by his ankles, his throat slit. A note pinned to his chest read, "Partners in crime." "Partners in crime?" Marcus said, his voice trembling. "What does that mean? Were they involved in this?" "I don't think so," I whispered, though doubt gnawed at me. The killer seemed to be playing games, twisting our perceptions at every turn. With only 4 of us left, me, Marcus, Layla, and Jordan, we decided to search the cabin for clues. While searching, Marcus and I stumbled upon a hidden door in the floor of the study. Beneath it was a staircase leading to a secret room. What we found chilled me to the bone. The walls were covered in photographs of us. Every moment of our weekend had been documented. Us grilling on the deck, searching the woods, even sleeping. Beneath the photos were files containing disturbing details about our lives. "This isn't random," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were chosen." Then we found the journal. It belonged to Mr. Harrington, the cabin owner. His entries were erratic, filled with ramblings about cleansing the unworthy and offering sacrifices to the woods. As we climbed back upstairs, we heard screaming. Rushing into the living room, we found Layla dead, her head bashed in with a fire poker. Jordan stood over her, the weapon in his hand, tears streaming down his face. She attacked me," he sobbed. "I didn't have a choice." Marcus didn't believe him. "Drop the poker, Jordan." Jordan hesitated, and in that moment of tension, the true killer revealed himself. Mr. Harrington stepped out of the shadows, holding a hunting rifle. "You kids are always the same," he said, his voice calm, almost bored. "So eager to trust, so quick to turn on each other." Before anyone could react, he raised the rifle and fired, hitting Jordan square in the chest. Marcus and I bolted. We sprinted through the woods, the sound of Harrington's boots and the crack of his rifle echoing behind us. We didn't stop running until we reached the highway. A passing car screeched to a halt, and the driver, a kind-faced older woman, let us in. As we sped away, I looked back at the forest, half expecting Harrington to emerge from the trees. But the road remained empty. We went to the police, but Harrington's connections ran deep. The cabin had been cleared out by the time investigators arrived, and the photos, files, and journal were gone. The official story was that a wild animal had killed our friends. Marcus and I knew the truth, but we were powerless to prove it. Weeks later, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a single photograph of me and Marcus, taken at the cabin. On the back, written in red ink, were the words, "See you next time.